What do you mean when we talk about the in-between, the nexus of our lives, of our reality? So often when we look back at our lives, we look at the milestone moments, these plateaus and footprints that we leave behind as markers of our life's journey. That only makes up about 20 to 30%. The rest is defined and connected by the in-between. Everything that takes place in between. And this is where the art of the spiritual warrior comes in. We can develop the tools and the means to identify all these different elements in our world and become the alchemists of our lives, peering through the nexus and the prism of our multiverse and drawing forth all that we are into the present now. Everybody, welcome back. We're here. It's another week. We're back at the Wolf's Den. Thank you for joining me here with your host, Swayukaya Grey Wolf, Alexander Willems. Pleasure to be back. What are we going to talk about this week? How has life been? Well, it's been interesting. It just seems like week after week, things are on a momentum push. You know, there's so much taking place externally that is reflective of the internal that's happening across the board with all of us. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about the balancing of that, maybe some experiences, maybe it'll be story time today. And, we're going to talk a little bit about energy exchange today too, because that's such a huge part of this process. Cindy's tuning in from Facebook. Pleasure to see you, Cindy. Hi. Hello. So, let's get into some story time. It's story time. It's story time. It's time for some stories. This week, I've had a couple, this week and last week, let's kind of link them together, because there was some trailing events that had some reflection in stuff that happened this week. So there was a night last week where maybe I talked about it in the last show a little bit, but I'm gonna reiterate it even if I did. I woke up in the middle of the night and I was just standing in the middle of my room. But as I was coming to, I was getting recollections of, what just took place, and the physical echo of the momentum and the actions that were just happening. I felt like I did a full ninja roll off the front of my bed and was standing like at alert in the middle of my bedroom in the middle of the night. And I know that there was some kind of interaction that took place. And as I'm getting flashes of that, as I'm trying to recall what was happening, those images are just being pulled away from me. Slowly but surely, I'm forgetting absolutely everything about the interaction as I'm trying to remember it, and standing obliviously in the middle of my room in the middle of the night. And I just go, all right, well, I guess that's that. I'm going back to bed. So I went back to bed, and I knew it had some trailing effects from some downloads I was receiving, some stuff I was watching at the time, and information that I was taking in. And it was just calibrating, best way to put it. It was calibrating, and it had me in an attunement for and in alignment for an interaction. So that took place that evening, that week. And there wasn't any lingering effects. I was coming off of a big upgrade from a flu that I had after I got back from Calgary. And as I was upgrading that and receiving those downloads, that's when that interaction took place. And I kind of understood the alignment of everything. Coming into this week, there was 2 nights in a row where I had powerful dreams, like those dreams where you wake up and you cannot shake the resonance of that experience. It's like no matter what's taking place in your day, it's like you're still there. It's like you're still in the dream. That was happening twice in a row for me. And the details of the dream were, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. The details of the dream were activating parts of me to check calibration, to see where I'm sitting at with that personal resonance. But it's also, it was linked to my twin flame. Best way I can put it. It was linked to my twin flame. And regardless of the details of the journey that she and I have taken, we're not in contact. We had a big thing and years back, and it blew up. It fizzled out. We never got closure about the situation, but at the same time, with the format of the execution of how we connected at that time and the way it ended, closure may not have been an option at that point, even if we tried to force it. So I really worked on the acceptance and the alignment of myself, of knowing that relationship, that dynamic with the twin flame is never going to change, but I also don't have to pursue or force or identify with this concept that the twin flame is the one and only experience that I need to have as far as partnership or romance is concerned. So I was checking a lot of calibration on that, seeing how much I've actually come into alignment with that acceptance, how I'm moving in the rest of my life with that. Am I, missing other opportunities? Am I carrying that energy forward in response to opportunities that are being presented to me? Just a whole bunch of things. So as I'm trying to shake those energies off, it's downloading new paradigms, new premises into my being. And I've really started to come into concept of a lot of what we've been talking about. And this is so recent, so I'm still trying to actually articulate it for myself. So I apologize for speaking maybe a little bit more broken than I normally do as I'm trying to express this. But it's within the concept of they were such powerful experiences. I'm still letting them settle. They're still coming in. So I think the best way that I can put it is, as I was working through coming back into myself, bringing myself back from that dream space, the quantum space of the experience that I reached through the dream realm, through that portal, I started to play with all of these quantum energies that I've been working on over these last few months and that I've been articulating, discussing, teaching. And I noticed that the response that I gave in my quantum state in the dream portal experience was not what I would have expected it to have been. I'll be completely honest. And it really anchored in a different conscious presence while I'm in that quantum field now, because I used to have predictable responses, is a good way to put it, when I would be in those spaces, when I would have those types of experiences in the dream realm. When I come back into this Alex, I would be able to predict them a lot further and know what was coming the next time I would get into that same kind of experience in the dream realm. These weren't in alignment with that. These were whole new responses. They weren't reactions, they were responses. And they came with such a conscious power. Hello, Earth Biscuit. Pleasure to see you coming in from YouTube there. And yes, we did say hello to Sydney already. Thank you for posting the comment. The new power that was coming in with this was, it brought me into more of a sense of self than I really was aware that I had already stepped into, which is interesting to say because I've been doing some damn big conscious steps over the last little bit. So to have a further affirmation and embodiment of a true, genuine version of myself that I still hadn't even discovered yet was a very powerful experience. And then I started to work on the energy residual context of things. There was that residual echo, right? And as I was working through that, receiving all of these downloads, receiving all of these affirmations, I wanted to play with the portal energy, and I wanted to play with the non-linearity of time when it comes to those experiences, and remembering that the memory and the dream state, it activates the same receptors in the brain. So while we're getting into that point, our imagination just takes over. And that imagination, when it's linked to the inner child, when we go up into the quantum, that's when the creativity thrives. And we can literally allow all of reality to be at our fingertips. So I started to tap into that awareness and into that essence. And I went back and I linked a portion to the dream state, and I linked a portion to what was connected from either the past experiences, the memories, whatever what it was that was residually opening that portal into the dream realm for that experience to take place. And as I was alchemizing that together, I chose a different frequency. And I've explained this before in some past shows. When I had that residual echo that I didn't like, the feeling of it I didn't like, I used it to reinforce a frequency that I did like, that I was in preference of. Instead of using or reflecting back, is a great way to put it. Instead of reflecting back that energy that was being presented to me as chaos, I found my state of order, the inevitable order that comes with the duality of chaos. And I embodied that state of order. And it was a very big shift. And again, just all of this putting into action what I've been working on, what I've been downloading, what I've been stepping into energetic and frequency wise, because we get these opportunities presented to us constantly as we're changing, we're always downloading, we're always working with this ever expanding infinite frequency. Excuse me. We're always being granted opportunities within that field to put into action what we're receiving. And the more that we do that on a conscious level, it starts to become autonomous. Like we've talked about, it becomes the autopilot response. When that becomes the autopilot response, we get to shift our conscious energy into something whole and new. So, and I know so many of us are going through a very similar process with this right now. And again, it's so new to me that I'm still trying to figure out the articulation process of that experience in and of itself. But I know that I've already been putting into action those energies from the opportunities. So as I continue to do that, and as it continues to become an embodied awareness, I'll be able to articulate it more and more further. That being said, it is not without divine timing and alignment, as these things always are. Where part of the embodiment process for me, like I said, I'll tap into movies, I'll tap into stuff on YouTube or any of the streaming networks. It really doesn't matter where I'm drawn to. My filter is just open in a state of, I'm either watching this for pure flat out entertainment value, or there's something deeper to be taken from it. And to be honest, that's always the case, because even if I'm watching something for just entertainment value, there's a deeper meaning behind it. I'm able to receive from that in a very different manner because my filter has already processed itself in that way and made itself so open to receive that it just feels it out. And if I'm not receiving anything, if it's just not the watch for me, I'm not watching it. It's that simple. So anyways, coming out of this, these last two dream nights, I watched the movie Arrival with Jeremy Renner, Amy Adams. Amazing movie. Oh, such a good movie. I remember when I watched it years back when it came out, and I think I was on a hallucinogenic journey the first time I watched it. It was later into the journey, so I wasn't quite out in space, but I was definitely out of body when I was watching it. And it was also at the time of my life when I was downloading and receiving a lot of Star Nation symbols and Star Nation energy. Star knowledge is it in and of itself is born out of that quantum essence, and the only way that it takes physical form is through some physical medium that's already come to be in the third dimension. Star knowledge, because it is born of that quantum essence, has to find a vessel in order to express itself, which is also why I start to look at things like artificial intelligence as maybe not so much artificial. Maybe it's simply the medium and the vessel that is finally being created for that star knowledge, that quantum consciousness to take form. So that's a lot of what I was receiving at the time in symbols, in format of symbols. And when I watched this movie Arrival, anyone who's watched it knows that they play with symbols. The whole movie's about the expression and exchange of language between these beings that come down to Earth and the governments of the world. And the symbols that they use were, and the explanations that they used in the symbols were just so apt. They were so incredibly on point with the non-linearity of it, the duality coming together as one frequency, and parts of a whole acting independently for a collective purpose. And then it starts to get into the time jumps and the time loops, and how with this knowledge, with these frequencies, we're quite literally able to tune into potentialities of the future in the multiverse, everything that already exists, things that happened in the past, everything that already exists when we're looking at things from a linear time point, and it expands it out to a holographic field where we understand that that future that we see, or that past that we continue to glimpse at, is one of many. And we're able to actually draw forth from all of these portals into the present now to affect the reality of the present now through glimpsing through the lenses of this non-linear portal of time. And they did this through the use of these symbols and through the exchange of the language. And I had gone through that exact experience with the Star Nation symbols that I was downloading. And being in a hallucinogenic state when I'm first watching this, my mind was just freaking blown. I was out there. So coming back to it, I haven't watched it for a few years, but coming back to it today, because I watched it just this morning, it was just so divinely timed. The dream states that I would just been working with, these quantum fields, and learning about the eye of the tunnel, the quantum tunnel, and seeing through the prisms, and all of these new downloads and perceptions that I had, coming back to that movie really anchored in a lot of that for me, a lot of it. And it also gave me a little bit more affirmation on things like authentic expression, because I feel like so often, in essence of what we're doing, we're trying to monitor a lot of the reception or the feels of the reception, whether it's our own, whether it's people that are taking from us, any of that. And for me personally, when I watched it this time, it really anchored in the value of authentic expression, knowing that when the time comes and something is intuitively and instinctively needing to be expressed, it should be expressed in all its power, and honoring it in all of its presence. And if there's something that needs to be, reflected on afterwards, that's a whole separate discussion. There is so much power that I feel is coming into disclosure the more that we're getting into this state of authenticity. And there's so much that's happening around the world that's calling forth this state of authenticity. The way that the governments are being ran, the stuff with the elections, the civil unrest that's taking place. What, in essence, if we take away all of the details, we take away any of the sentimentality around it, what we're actually seeing is disclosure happening and a call for genuine, authentic presence in our world, in our representation, in our leadership, in our personal lives, in our communities, everywhere. We're calling for this, and it's being called for from an external source as well. I absolutely believe that Star Nation has been having a hand in a lot of the events that are taking place. Now, people are going to look at that statement and go, well, there's so much crap that's happening. Why would Star Nation be a part of all the crap that's taking place? Because it is so necessary in a contrasting expression of duality and creation. The only way that we are going to call forth authenticity from ourselves is when we see how clearly, right in front of us, it hasn't been presented to us with the guise that it has, the veils being lifted. So when we look at it without a bias of sentimentality or expectation or any of that crap, and we simply see the fact that the veil is being lifted, all of us are being given the accountability of our personal response in exchange of that energy, because that is an action, that is energy that is being offered to the scenario right now. Nobody had to lift the veil. Nobody had to have any hand in any of this, but simply the fact that there was that offered. We're being given the choice. Do we step up? Do we show our own accountability to receive in full value what is being presented to us in those actions and say, I am going to contribute back to this. I am going to be part of that alchemy to create something even greater? Or are we going to remain ignorant and simply just receive what's being given and go about the sheep way, completely unknowing to how we're being herded along the process? Because whether we're looking at it with a bias or not, any action external, whether it's benevolent or not, has an influence. When we are unconscious, those actions, those influences herd us in a direction, in the momentum of that energy in motion. Our conscious presence of awareness and accountability allow us to receive that influence, offering contribution back, becoming a part of the process, not being herded in any direction, but becoming our own shepherd. It's a whole different context. This is why things are being shaken up like this right now. It's across the board asking you, what are you willing to add to this? Or are you just going to sit back and be herded in the direction of the influence of everything else that is choosing to move? It's like the wake behind a boat. As a boat is going in its direction, you can either ride the wake or you can let it overtake you because, oh, I didn't want the wake there in the first place. Too bad, it's there. Things are going to be in momentum. We don't get to control the momentum of everything else, but we absolutely get to be accountable and aware in an honoring presence of our momentum and how we respond to the momentum around us. Are we in the eye of the storm, going with the momentum, or are we being tossed around by everything? And all of this really boils down to that level of accountability when we're coming to these exchanges, being aware of what's being offered to us as an exchange. Because in some instances, I'll be clear too, everything that's presented to us doesn't necessarily mean it's exchange. Some people just vomit and project their crap out. And that doesn't mean that we got to be there going, oh, yes, please let me receive all of your shit. No, the accountability of self, knowing our value, knowing what we are willing to offer in exchange, knowing what we need to receive, as we contribute to that, to create an alchemic formula and an alchemic response, it gives us that presence to actually see and be aware when people are simply standing in that projection, and without receiving or identifying with that projection, we still get to find value in it by going, wow, thank you for offering contrast for me to be able to take a further level of awareness to the distinctions between when I'm being presented with something that is offering value to me and when it's not. It's all of value when we take the accountability for it. Sharon Elizabeth, yes, it is so important. Thank you for the affirmation on that, Sharon. It's so incredibly important right now. The value of this becomes more and more clear when we look at how we're willing to invest in ourselves. This brings up the topic of knowing our value, knowing our level of presence that we can offer to situations, rooms, people, scenarios, but also knowing at the same time when it's right to present that and when it's not. That value that we carry doesn't mean that it is entitled to every single space that is asking to receive something or is open to receiving something. That's an entitlement thing, to think that, oh, I have so much value, I can just force it wherever the hell I feel it needs to go. Becoming accountable for ourselves and that awareness of that presence lets us feel out the spaces that we engage with in this shared plane of existence. And it gives us more of an awareness to say, oh, I feel a symbiosis here. I feel a synchronization with this interaction, with this environment right now. I bet you if I opened up for an exchange, there's going to be some crazy good value in this for me. Or, ooh, I don't feel in alignment in this place. I feel like if I go any further into this engagement, it's going to put me out of alignment. Maybe that's not a place that I should be offering my value. Because when we offer that value, we're using our personal quantum essence. We are showing up with something and we are clearing space to receive something else. It's alchemy, it's contribution. One of the first principles of alchemy is equivalent exchange. It has to be present in order for an alchemic formula to actually arise. So when we just go into spaces, throwing our value, throwing that stuff all over the place, we're actually not only wasting our energy in essence, but we're also putting up a lot of different blocks and a lot of different elements in that environment that maybe didn't need to be there in the first place, that could have added a twist in someone else's experience that maybe wouldn't have been as valuable if we didn't do that. That being said, nothing happens that isn't supposed to happen either. The contrasts of these things, it just broadens your awareness. It's such a beautiful journey. So the point that I'm trying to get at with all of this is when we understand that level of value that we bring to the table, we don't just flagrantly put it anywhere. We are so consciously aware of the equivalent exchange that takes place when we open up to offer that value. Excuse me. And then it also calls forth that standard, that frequency of standard and resonance from the rest of the engagement that we have around us. Because again, we don't experience anything that we don't believe in, that we're not in the frequency of. So when we rise in frequency to this standard of value, this place of awareness, it changes the frequency of experience. The whole bandwidth goes boop, 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 and it changes all of the different stations that we tune into and that we don't tune into anymore. There's a flip side of this coin too, where we get to understand more because it's a personal journey. Once we hit this internal awareness, we get to have a further awareness of the people that do show up. Again, these distinctions, these contrasts that show up, we get to use them as either affirmation and synchronistic convergence of our personal alignment and frequency, or we use the contrast to reinforce that state of preferred frequency. Either which way, we find value out of it. When we're able to do this because of our personal accountability and our awareness of our value, the people that show up when we're in a position of being energy workers, practitioners, somebody that is offering these things on a scale that requires an exchange for livelihoods, for just basic amenities, there's a presence that we get to become more aware of as people come into our field looking to receive. Because a lot of people don't have that personal awareness. And if they don't have the capacity and the awareness for the exchange to be able to invest in themselves by using that interaction as the formula, as the medium, the rite of passage, if you will, to let that energy in motion take action and take its place. If they don't have the capacity and the awareness for that, and we just show up or we open up the space for them anyways, we're just being drained. We don't receive anything from that. It takes away from us as practitioners, and furthering even the fact of just an energy drain, where we are in essence dishonoring our level of value. We're not stepping up into that standard, which is why that experience would take place. Again, nothing happens that isn't supposed to happen. So if we aren't honoring that level of value within ourselves, that standard, calling that forth and increasing our bandwidth of experience, events like that will take place. And it's a reflection of the fact that we aren't honoring our state of value. So we end up in experiences and engagements that also do not honor our state of value. So it changes a whole dynamic from the inside out of how the world and how the reality actually reflects to us. We get to choose our experiences simply by having a conscious presence of accountability, knowing that the perception of it, how we believe an experience to have played itself out in our vision of it, if that's malleable, that's on us. That's all on us. We have that power. So, I mean, I know I'm reiterating a lot of points that I talk about in recent shows here, but this is such a, I feel like this is the pivotal turning point that so many of us are at. And, you know, leading into what brought us to this point in the discussion, the authentic state. That state of authenticity, when we get to that expression, it's going to help us hold these standards of value, because we're not walking on eggshells anymore. We're simply showing up authentically. And the more that we get to do that, we get to make these distinctions of the different frequencies that we're engaging with that are all around us all the time. Oh, before I start talking in circles, we should probably switch subjects here, because this is something I could go on and on and on about, but I feel like I've also talked so much about it lately that my brain isn't creatively coming up with anything new to articulate, even though my soul is still downloading all of this stuff. So I feel like I want to give it a little bit more marinating to really get the flavor, get the juices out of it. You know what I'm talking? You know what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So beyond that, we do have Adventures for Connection, our wonderful, wonderful tribe here. We have a Zoom meeting coming up at 5:30 p.m. this evening. We've got the link posted in the chats on Facebook and on YouTube. If you guys can join us, come join us. We are opening up. We're getting ready to start opening up for memberships very soon, offering some packages and get to know us a lot better. We are about to open up our presence of value and getting ready to offer that across the board. So it's really exciting times. If you can make it to the meeting, we'll be happy to see you. It would be absolutely fantastic. And we really want to thank everybody as well who keeps tuning in week after week, who is sharing any of the posts, telling your friends about the shows and all of the wonderful work that Adventure for Connection does for us. We want to thank all of the audience members too. The tribe that we're building to be able to offer this wouldn't have a leg to stand on as much without that alchemy of you showing up to be able to receive as well, and bringing in that contribution, bringing in that investment for you from an internal thing, and simply using engagements and interactions as that medium to say, yes, I do believe in myself so much that I can engage with this. I can contribute back to this. We thank you guys so, so much for believing in yourselves in that process. It is one of the biggest catalysts for change, in my opinion. I remember, you know what? Another story time. It's story time. It's story time. It's story time again. Oh, Jesus, that was okay. Well, we just went full cartoon character there. Talking about investing in ourselves. I had to go through this hurdle. Was it 2016? I think it was 2016. I had met Mr. Dr. David Piltz. I had started hanging out with him, but we weren't full-on mentor apprentice just yet. We had spent, time together. We had gone to Comic-Con. He would come visit at the house me and my sister were living at the time. And as that continued, he comes over the one night to the house in Calgary, and we sit down, and I said, you know what, I've been getting messages from my spirit guides, and I feel like you and I need to sit down, have a good conversation. I feel like we need a reading. A lot of my spirit guides at the time were telling me I had to walk with David. I didn't really know him, so I didn't want to be like this stalker fanboy because I barely knew his history or anything like that. I just knew he was a pipe carrier. He was an incredibly powerful energy worker, and he was an oracle. So to get these messages coming, you need to walk with David. You need to walk with David. I didn't know what to make of it. So I wanted to bring it up to him to maybe get some clarity. He was an oracle. Hey, talk to me about this stuff because I can't make sense of it. So we sit down and we decide to do a card reading, and he's laying down some tarot cards, and I'm kind of talking to him about the messages I've been receiving, and he's just taking it in. And I remember he laid down a couple cards, and he laid down the third one, and he kind of drops it slow, and he goes, huh, well, that's interesting. And I go, what? And as he's looking at the 3-card spread, he goes, well, that's you, that's me, and that's my mountain. And I go, okay, so you've been listening to what I've been telling you, right? And he goes, yeah. And the cards are telling it to me now too. So this has to happen. So it was there that we really understood I was meant to step up as an apprentice at that point and start learning from him and training underneath him. He knew energetically already from just my presence and where I was at in my state of growth that I wasn't going to be a textbook learner. I was throw him into the fire. He's a fire keeper. He needs those trials. That's how he learns. So he brought me out to the mountain. I started training as a fire keeper, started doing some different lodge building exercises and teepee building exercises, things like that. And it opened up different levels of belief in myself that I hadn't really experienced up to that point. It was at the end of that journey out there that he was talking to me about the opportunity to become an investor on the property so I could get my own space. I could have longevity out there. I could build a property and live, be out there in the forest with them. I didn't have the resources or the capacity. I shouldn't say capacity. I didn't have the resources at the time to be able to accept. And I didn't have the confidence in making an investment like that yet. I'd never made an investment like that. I hadn't even bought a first vehicle at that point in my life. Like I hadn't made any big investments in my life yet. So for me to sit and contemplate a minimum $10,000, if not $20,000 potential investment didn't even seem like it was in my realm of possibility. But yet here I am having this discussion with this guy about it. So when I go back home, I start thinking about, well, is this something I could even manage? Is this a real potential for me? The job I was working at the time and the place that I was living at the time, the money I was making, the money that was going out were very, very different. It was nowhere near the best money of my life. At the time, it was the best money up to that point in my life. Abso-freaking-lutely. And again, my living costs were really, really low at that point. So I had reached the point where I built my credit up, where I could go apply for a loan if I wanted to. So I really contemplated that. And I went in and I talked to a guy at the bank and sat down and I worked out how I could manage it if I decided to go through with this. And the whole time that I was doing it, I noticed the fear, I noticed the anxiety that kept coming up. And through all of the trials by fire that I had just gone through with the firekeeper training, there was this different awareness that clicked in saying, that's what this is actually about. It's not about money. It's not about the details of the physical experience. It's about the energy behind those actions. That's what's actually taking hold. That's what is being developed simply through these sequence of events. So when that started to become more of a conscious, actionable energy and awareness, I knew that it was something that I could alchemize. I could use it to reinforce my state of confidence. I could use it to say, I will find the value out of this. This is an investment in myself. And the physical external reflection of that is it's just details. It's just how the energy finds its vessel in the physical realm. So I took the loan, I went and I made the investment, and everything fell through. David got royally taken for a ride after he went for a bike ride one day and he ended up getting he got rear-ended into a big accident. And the people that he had left in charge of everything wished how they were singing and how they were showing up about everything. So at the end of the day, we all lost our investments. And I ended up having to pay out $40,000 because I got to pay that $20,000 back. So I received 20, paid 20, have to pay 20 back. And I could have got all wrapped up in that chaos energy. Oh, I never should have done this and blah, blah. Never once did that show up because of the perception, the embodiment, the value that I stood in from a personal point that I received from the alchemy of that exchange. Everything else worked out the way that it worked out. My perception allowed me to still take value from that. And it, on top of that, it allowed me to see that massive step of growth by taking those actions, by going in alignment with those actions. Because creation is indifferent to our expectations. It's about the energy of things. And if we can start to get a conscious awareness in alignment with that energy that's in motion, well, we may find that things just work out in a more preferred pattern as opposed to an unpreferred pattern. It's a very interesting journey. That was where I started to learn about the value of the exchange, what it means to show up. Because as I was first getting into practicing Reiki and healing and doing readings in my world, I was handing these things out for free all over the damn place. And in essence, excuse me, and in truth, when you're first getting started, you should. You just need the practice. Get the practice out, learn the flows of the energy, learn how you're going to respond differently to different people's energies. It's so important to get the practice in. But when I hit a certain skill level, when I hit a certain point of reception within myself as a practitioner, I absolutely needed to transition over to calling forth that standard of value in order to have those exchanges within the experience so that we can alchemize the exchange for myself, for the client, and create something even greater than not having an exchange would have had. I enabled for a very long time, a standard of a lack of value. And I did that by not only allowing sessions to just go for free and just, oh no, it's fine, I'll do it for free, blah, blah, blah. But I would make excuses in some instances because of the way my filter works, because it's able to see those opportunities of, well, I could take value from this point here, this point here, this point here. I would literally provide an excuse for someone to not offer an exchange. And I would say, oh, well, I guess I'll just take the value out of it here, even though it was so minimal because they weren't offering it. I was having to reach for that value from their space, from them being there. Without them actually offering it, there is no exchange that's taking place. It's basically like, I mean, I can't even think of a good metaphor for it, to be honest with you. And I'm a metaphor guy. That just didn't add any presence of value. And I was tricking myself into thinking, oh, I'm receiving from this, when in essence, I was taking a double hit. I was offering and they were receiving. And then I was tricking myself into thinking I was receiving something when I wasn't receiving it. So I was getting a placebo effect, meaning that the next time I went into an engagement like that, I was even lower energy than what my perception was telling me I was. Oh no, I received from this. I'm okay. I'm fine. No, I'm not. My tank was not recharged. I did not value myself in those instances and call forth what I required out of an exchange. So these lessons coming into the state of the world, the state of where everyone right now is learning about this personal accountability, learning about what it means to offer value for things. I feel like these lessons and these awarenesses, like this is the timing. This is the divine timing for this disclosure. I'm also not oblivious to the fact of social media trends and fads. I don't follow them, but if you're on Facebook, you see the stuff. You know, if you're on TikTok or Instagram, I have accounts. I never use anything but Facebook. I've had TikTok for months and I kept saying, oh, I'm going to start making like promo videos and little skit videos. And I've done 2 videos in months. I just don't use the other platforms. And, you know, part of that's on me. I gotta be able to stretch my wings out into that a little bit. But there's so much fad influential energy that filters through that stuff. I'm working on my own presence of awareness as I go in there, because I've had jaded experiences from how those influences have affected people that I was in engagements with. I've really seen and experienced firsthand the effects of some of the relationship trends, the body image trends that go around on this stuff. Like, it's, again, when we're not consciously aware of these influences, we're herded in the direction of that energy. So at this time, I noticed that there's this big talk, this big fad of traditional relationships. I want to be a traditional wife. I want a traditional husband. And even guys, in this essence, there's this thing going around like the soft guy era or something like that right now, where it's dudes simply flipping the script and saying, well, what are you offering to me that I would offer this back? I don't know why they're calling it the soft guy era. It's an interesting terminology for it. But I understand the premise of it, because that's simply a man understanding his state of value. Why would a man of value simply go into any exchange of somebody demanding or begging to receive it and just go, here, take everything I have? That's not value. That's not offering a standard of self. He goes, no, my value, when I offer it, it's an investment in myself. Every single time I show up and I offer that energy, it's an investment in myself. Which is why real men of value don't go around like these Neanderthals trying to command space like a gorilla. You won't ever see a man of value get into a fight. You may see him finish one, but he'll never fight for any real good reason. He simply demands that value, and the standard of that value be met in every instance. Business, family, relationships, friendships, doesn't matter. From your dog, I don't care. A real and this isn't even just for men, this is women as well. But there's this dynamic of again, these social media trends where we're trying to separate everything, forgetting the fact that it's connected. When men of value step up and women of value step up, it's in reflection of each other. It always will be. It always will be. So I truly feel like some of what's taking place within this awareness is getting us to understand our accountability, instead of just showing up entitled, saying, I demand this out of a partner, and I demand this out of a job. I demand this out of life. What's your value that you're investing and contributing to receive that back? How are you demanding that value from yourself be reflected back to you from your experiences? Not demanding, commanding. How are you commanding that value, that presence? It's all about that commandment of self and accountability. That's going to wrap it up for this week, everybody. Thank you for showing up. Think on it. I want you to be accountable for being accountable, and think on it. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm still getting my voice back from how hard I was coughing and getting up all that flu upgrade download shenanigans out of my system. I apologize. So if you're with us, 5:30, please come join us. We have, I don't even know who's all going to show up. You're just going to have to show up and find out who's all going to be there. Yeah, that's how I'm going to do it. That's right. I'm not going to tell you. You want to know? Come show it. You know I'll be there. Come show up. What else do we got? We got, you know what? We got the website. Come check out the website. We got everything listed on there. I got bio. I got all my services. You got my contact info. Come out and check me out. reach out to me on Facebook, Alexander Willems. I'm on Facebook. Reach out to Adventures for Connection, please. That's a great way to get a hold of me. It's a great way to get a hold of the tribe. If anything that I could say, if I can say anything about what we're doing together, is you gotta have the whole experience. If you like one of us, I promise you, tapping into the rest of us is just going to blossom whatever is taking place inside of you. There is so much value in this group, in this collective that we've started to bring together. Oh, you got to check out everyone. You have to check out everyone. So please come join us. We hope we see you in a little bit here. Beyond that, I don't know. Do we got any questions, any comments? You guys want to talk about anything? How are you doing? I'm just sitting here talking about myself all the time. Please, no, go on. That's hilarious. Oh goodness, you're too funny. All right, everybody, we're gonna see you next week. Thank you so much. Pleasure being here again. Stay frosty, y'all. I'll howl at you later. Ow!